We're going to be speaking to much-loved activist, Kieran. Hello, Kieran. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Marisa. How are you going?
Lovely to have you. Oh, not bad. It's a crazy show. But so, Kieran, you're a First Nations activist. Can you tell us what land you're from?
Yep, I'm a traditional owner of the Wani Wandian clan's land up in the Yuin Nation. It's about 3 hours south of Sydney, on the south coast of New South Wales, around Nowra, Jervis Bay.
And sorry that we're a bit late too.
No, that's okay.
Now, Kieran, we've talked about the voice to Parliament, and there's been quite a lot going on. Can you tell us a little bit, because you're from the Black People's Union?
Yep.
Is that right? So
Yep.
Can you tell us what's been going on, any updates? And I'm sure there are new listeners here on the Doin Time show. And there's often a yes for the voice, but not enough on the no. So can you tell us a little bit about what's been going on?
Yep, so the Black People's Union, we've been taking a no approach to the voice to Parliament and been campaigning no on that. Part of the reason why, for people who are, fresh listeners, part of the reason why is we see the voice to Parliament as not only being some tokenistic, powerless advisory body that won't actually do anything to be able to help us, but we actually see it as a step backwards and a distraction from the real issues of, truth and treaty and self-determination and our people being able to exercise our sovereignty. So, something that we're fighting and campaigning for is more than just a voice. We don't believe in tokenistic reforms from the government and that, the government actually wants to help us. We've seen dozens of these advisory bodies over the last couple of decades now. All of them have done nothing to actually address our conditions, like our deaths in custody rates, our child removal rates, our homelessness and our unemployment rates, anything like that. Not only that, if you actually look at the stats over the last couple of decades, every time Labor comes into government and tries to introduce these programs, what we actually see is our people's stats getting worse during those times. Now, that's not to say that Liberal helps blackfellas. They definitely don't help blackfellas in any way, the Liberal National parties, but they don't do anything. So, by not doing anything, they're not making things better or worse. Whereas when Labor comes in, they often come in with these paternalistic reforms that only end up making things worse for our people in the long run, because it's not self-determination and it's not real consultation with our people. It's just them coming in the same way they have for the last 235 years, saying they know what's best for us blackfellas and they're going to manage our own affairs for us. And so this voice proposal is just more of the same that we've already seen. So we've been out campaigning no on the voice, demanding more. Some of our initiatives that we're trying to push instead as alternatives is we want Indigenous nations across Australia to unite together. We want to see a treaty, but not a treaty with the government. We want to see a treaty in between Indigenous nations on this continent, so that together we can come together and have that one stronger, united force to be able to actually demand better and enforce better for our people.
Tell us a little bit about the demands, because I don't think we were able to talk about that last time.
The demands of the Black People's Union?
Yeah.
So we've got a few. If people have access to the internet, they can head over to our website. It's just blackpeoplesunion.org to read a bit more. We've got a few different demands and policies written up around stuff like land back and land rights, around incarceration, and how we could potentially address our over-incarceration. We've got stuff around our child removal as well. A lot of our own recommendations and potential path forward to address, the rate at which our children are taken so much. What we're trying to do now is just unite our mob. We're actually in the process of running some donation drives and fundraiser drives to try and get a vehicle on the road so that we can actually, hit the road and go out to all these regional communities around Australia. We can, sit down with mob all over Australia and have these discussions with them about, what we need to do to actually, achieve anything for our mob. Because at the moment, the way we see it is, we're this fractured, segregated, divided up little mass all across this country, like all these masses all across the country, all fighting our own individual fights, but all of our fights are the same fights ultimately. we've all got the same struggle, and that's against capitalism and against colonisation. So what we're trying to do is unite all of our mob together so that we can unite in that fight and that struggle and actually have a more coordinated and organised response to colonisation and be able to actually confront it a bit more head-on and actually achieve something instead of, being segregated off into 101 little struggles in our own little corners of the continent.
It seems to me that from what I've seen of media articles and TV and radio, not too much is actually talked about with the Black People's Union, which is why I asked you that question about, it wasn't a trick question, it was more to find out a bit more just about the position of the Black People's Union in regards to deaths in custody and over-incarceration and child removal, because that simply isn't talked about enough, is it?
No, yeah, it's not. And the thing is too, a lot of people, when it is talked about, especially in the mainstream media, it's talked about in a way where it's our history instead of our present. You know what I mean? Especially when we look at stuff like child removal. People talk about the stolen generations being something that happened back in the 1900s. But if we go and look at the stats, our kids are removed more today than they ever were at any period during the 1900s. The stolen generations never ended. They just got even bigger. They ramped it up even more. Ever since Kevin Rudd said sorry back in 2007, every single year since, more and more of our kids get taken. And it's not talked about enough. It's not actioned on. They're not doing anything about it in government. We can't rely on the government to do anything about it. And, that's more of the reason why we don't trust something like this voice proposal. They say that they're going to give us a voice to give them recommendations. But what about all of the recommendations they've given them for the last few decades? We've got the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody. That was back in 1991, 31 years ago now. And, they haven't implemented those. They haven't acted on those. There was recommendations and voices 31 years ago, and it's still being ignored. The Bringing Them Home report came out in, was it 97 or 99?
Yep.
But, same thing. It's been well over 20 years now. They still haven't acted on it. They still haven't implemented, all of the recommendations from it. And these recommendations that come from community and that come from, experts in the field, and they're just ignored. But we're supposed to believe that they're going to finally listen to our voices now if, a referendum passes.
And also, one of the other things that I've observed as well is that this type of rhetoric from Peter Dutton and his cronies in the Liberal Party, it's kind of weird the way the media's trying to connect it up with the Aboriginal people that are saying no.
Yeah, I have noticed that as well, and it's wrong what they're doing. We are not in any way affiliated with the racist no. These people are out here saying, like people like Dutton, I should say, sorry, people like Dutton and Hanson, they're out there saying no because they don't believe blackfellas should get anything, even if it is scraps that fall off the table. Whereas we're saying no because we actually believe that we don't want scraps off the table. The table belongs to us. This is our land. We've never ceded our sovereignty. We want more than just a seat at the table. At the very least, we want a seat at the table, sort of thing. But, at the end of the day, the table belongs to us. We shouldn't be content with the scraps that fall off it.
Indeed. And it's NAIDOC week this week. What do you think about NAIDOC?
Yeah, look, mixed thoughts on NAIDOC. No, look, don't get me wrong. I love the celebration of, our people and our culture and our community. And, I love seeing, that black excellence recognised in our community. And, especially when we have themes like this year where we're, paying homage to our elders and to all those, uncles and aunties that have helped pave the way for us younger activists. It's, good to see them being recognised and acknowledged. Not the biggest fan of some of the commercialisation of NAIDOC, but, it is what it is. And at the end of the day, I suppose it's, you got to, it's just pros and cons of it all.
There really are, and there really are. And you, I thought I'd ask you that question. I haven't done too much on NAIDOC today because I've been doing a lot of work on this show about racial profiling of First Nations people and also African and Middle Eastern people during the pandemic with all the fines.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And so there was a report written about that. But look, I really wanted to have you on as a follow-up, just to keep this issue alive about the fact that it isn't just about saying yes to the referendum. It's also about saying no.
Yeah, definitely. And look, I really appreciate the opportunity because, most radio stations and newspapers and whatever else, they're just not giving those voices to that progressive no. They're really jumping on either Labor's bandwagon of the, regressive yes, or they're jumping on the racist no.
And Pauline Hanson has been interesting.
Yeah, she always is.
I won't comment too much more about that, but it's ridiculous, really. It's there's so much conservatism in Australia. It's almost like it's still back in the 1788 all over again.
Yeah, it really is. And the thing is too, and this is something I've been noticing more and more lately. It's almost as if things are getting so much worse all the time. One thing I'll quickly mention, something that you hear quite often about the yes and no of the voice is that we need to vote yes because, a vote no would set us back 20 years or set us back 30 years. But you go look at the stats from 20, 30 years ago, our mob were, for the most part, actually better off back then. You know what I mean?
In what sense?
If you go look at the incarceration stats, our mob were less incarcerated then. Our children were being removed at less rates than they are today. Back then, 20, 30 years ago, our people had less homelessness than they do right now. In a lot of ways, our stats are worse now than they were 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's...
And, you got to remember, too, this whole proposition started with John Howard, nearly 30 years ago, 25-odd years ago. And now you've got the Liberal parties even saying no now when it was originally their idea.
Oh, it's priceless, isn't it? It's approximately 4:47 and it's been great talking to you, Kieran, and I'm hoping we can have you back at some stage.
Yeah, no worries. I'd love to be back on.
Good on you. Take care.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.